Raymond. Empower your purpose.
Hey, welcome to everybody. Today, the topic we're going to discuss is the annual exam of your practice. Today, I'm joined with Danielle Ambrosi, who's a principal in our Detroit office, and Matt Barzak, who's a principal in our Grand Rapids office. Thank you both for joining today.
Thanks for having us, Kurt.
Glad to be here.
You know, over the past couple of weeks, I've had both my annual medical exam and my semi-annual dental exam. And it got me thinking, you know, are our clients, our prospects to be, are they taking that same type of approach, you know, in their offices? I know when I went through it, overall, my health's pretty good. But in each appointment that I had, it was like, well, you could be a little bit better here. You could be a little bit better here. You know, so when we're talking about analyzing the health of our practice, what does this mean? You know, for me, I look at it from a holistic standpoint of, you know, what can our practitioners be doing? What are they doing well? But what could they be doing better? But how do you think of it, Matt?
So for me, I think it's really taking a step back and looking at your practice, maybe how you're not looking at it on a daily basis. So, you know, every day you're coming in, you're treating your patients, you're doing your job, but do you take a step back and look at your practice maybe from your patient size, from your staff size, kind of stepping back and just taking that different approach?
The way I like to think of it too is, if there's one thing I know in life, is that there's no perfect person, right? You can also view that from the lens of there's no perfect practice. We should always be working on how to improve our practice. There's always something to work on. And I love the fact that you can view it from a different lens, maybe from the patient's perspective or even from a staff's perspective as well.
Why does it matter? You know, from my perspective, when I take a look at why does it matter, you know, small investments here or there, both in time and financially, can save a lot of pain and a lot of, you know, heavy duty financial burden, you know, as well. Give me your perspective.
Kurt, I think you said it perfectly in the intro. When you are going to your annual checkups, it's better to be preventative, to do those small steps ahead of time to save you those bigger headaches down the line. So looking at what can I do today to be proactive, to be preventative, than dealing with a disaster down the road that I didn't anticipate.
Also coming back to the improvement perspective too, one thing I like the fact that we do this at the end of the year, right? We can look back at the lens of 2022 historically. We can also look forward to 2023. We could say, I always try to ask a few questions, right? 2022, what went well and what didn't go so well? Those are two great opportunities for improvement. And then looking forward to 2023, what do you want to accomplish? And we can even utilize this for, you know, employee engagement or employee reviews. Ask them those questions. That gives you a great opportunity to pour into that associate's life and then reflect on yourself as well.
What are some areas, the two of you, and I'll start with Danielle, maybe, what's an area or two that you like to have practices take a look at?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that they should look at is their receivables. Your accounts receivables is really the lifeblood of your practice. You can work hard all year, but if you're not collecting on that work, you're not growing, you're not able to continue. So I think receivables is a really good one to start looking at. What are your collections percentages? How many days are your AR aging? Do you have a lot that's over, you know, 60, 90 days? What can you improve on? What do you need to get written off to clean up for the next year? Kind of just taking an overall holistic view of your receivables is a good place to start.
Looking too at facilities. So managing your facilities, you could potentially have a lease that's coming up for renewal. A great opportunity to look at that and be more proactive, or maybe you're even purchasing a building, getting a step ahead of that game. And that's why it's important to focus on your goals for the upcoming year so you can stay ahead of those and not, like you said, be more reactive. Let's be proactive.
You know, two other areas that I like as well. One is the overall patient experience, you know, assess how that's going. And then one other one would be just well, I guess, is a branch of the patient experience, is your Google reviews and your reviews that you get online. There's many times when you think everything's going on amazing in your practice, and then there are times when you have Google reviews out there, and some are very rave, some are amazing, and then others are not as great. So that patient experience side of things, I think, is a key aspect to look at as well.
And as you mentioned, kind of with reviews, sometimes you're like, when I'm looking at reviews for other companies, you'll see the company respond to a negative review. So just making sure you're careful on how you interact with patients that do maybe leave you a bad review. Be careful of HIPAA, be careful of, engaging in a negative way, because that can actually do more harm than good. So just making sure you're careful when you're looking at those reviews.
Mm-hmm.
I think, focusing more to, like you said, that patient experience, Kurt, that's more important now than it ever has been before. So the next generation, they almost care more about the experience they get and their comfort level when they go into a practice than anything. They would be more than willing to pay a higher dollar cost if their experience was better. And one thing you taught me early on, Kurt, was, hey, let's pull up to the practice early before a meeting. And this goes for anyone, sit in the parking lot, go through what that patient experience looks like, walk in the front door, not the back door, sit in the lobby for a little bit, and just wear a different pair of shoes.
When you bring that up, Matt, and it is amazing to where, as you pay attention to what's going on in your practice and things like that, we go back to the Google reviews. There's a lot of people that before they'll step in or accept or even call an office for that first appointment, they'll do a search. Hey, what are people saying about this practice? So Google reviews alone can almost make it to where patients won't even be given an opportunity to experience the amazing, care you give or education they'll receive when they come in there. So there again, the gate might be closed even when you don't even know it. So thank you for that. Equipment is another aspect of what your practice might need to stay relevant. Anybody having an experience with, how is the equipment, I guess, availability these days?
Yeah, I think it's getting a little bit better. I don't know what yours is too, Danielle, as far as the lag time, but during COVID, it wouldn't be uncommon to wait 6 months for an order, 9 months even for an order. So making sure, hey, we're looking to expand in June next year. Well, now would be a great time to call ahead and say, okay, what does the supply chain look like? What's the delay on some of these deliveries?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It's definitely getting better than it was, but it's still not perfect. And your best bet is to be proactive, to make those purchases early so that you have it before something breaks. So if something's on its last leg, get that order in beforehand so that when it does break, you have it available to you. Because the last thing you want to do is be without as well.
On that same topic, this is always the time of year when somebody says, hey, what's my tax position look like? Should I buy some equipment? And my old adage is buy it if you think you're going to need it or need it for a replacement. Don't buy equipment just to save taxes, because you save the 35% of the tax liability, but you're still out the 65%. So I'm sure you guys get that same comment and question at you as well.
Absolutely. Don't let the tax tail wag the dog, right?
Mm-hmm. Matt, could you maybe talk a little bit about some of the HR component?
Yeah, and a big piece over the last 2 years too has been a significant fluctuation in your overall staffing costs. A great time to look at, how are we as compared to our peers when it comes to compensation, doing a compensation review of your staff, and also from a compliance perspective too, HR handbook. It's a great time to review that, especially with changing times. And just review your overall employee engagement as well. So there's a lot of segues, I would say, into our HR consulting team to where we can help out with those needs as well.
Terrific. Another area that is pretty hot topic in any type of practice, is cybersecurity. It's amazing on you. Even you think of some of the greatest corporations, some of the greatest healthcare systems, you think, I'll bet you those are locked down like crazy. And then all of a sudden you get that little email or that blog that comes out that says, oh, this organization's been compromised. And that's another thing that I think our practices need to take into consideration, the damage, not only financially, from a standpoint of what you have to do if you're, if your information's compromised, or if you are, held to a ransom. The last part is what I've always said to people, what would happen, will patients ultimately leave your practice if they feel like they can't trust the condition or the security of their private health information?
And this is a huge issue right now too. It's what you don't know that's going to hurt you, right?
And some people will think, hey, I have insurance. If this happens, I'll have insurance. But that's just a tiny little bit. And I think maybe Danielle, you can comment more on how our insurance companies, even to maintain coverage, they want specific protocols and systems in place.
Yeah, if you don't have those policies and procedures ahead of time in place, they're not going to cover it. And like you said, it's more about the reputational and those kinds of damages versus the insurance coverage that you would get. I mean, you're better off putting the time and effort on the front end to make sure you're protected and doing everything you can to stop something like that happening. Because like you said, insurance is just, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'll tell you what's fun is as you go through some of these things, some of the success stories. And I had a young lady recently purchase a practice, and she hired me to come in and do a practice assessment. And overall, it went really well. The team was doing a great job. However, we did change up a little bit of the scripting. As we talk about, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And as there were things that were, as patients were calling, we just kind of tweaked just a little bit. The attitude was great, the tone was great, but just a little bit of the verbiage on, as patients called, what they were looking for. But probably the greatest component of it on the back end was how they requested payment at the end. And that made such a big difference in patients, kind of recognizing the valuable service that was done, the valuable treatment that was done that day. And you're like, oh yeah, it was a great recall, and it really tied into what the fee was versus a patient kind of trying to play it out all together and kind of go, wow, that sounds high, and when they got to recoup of, hey, today we completed a cleaning, we completed x-rays, and doctor completed an exam on you today. Therefore, your investment today with this office is such and such. The patient actually made a comment, wow, you guys did a lot today in that short period of time. So that's kind of a success story that I think was nice as you go through and identify areas in your practice that a little bit of outside consulting can help.
Yeah, I think that ties directly into that patient experience too, right? If you have some employees communicating in a certain way within the practice, and then other employees communicating in a slightly different way, that can look very disorganized, and that goes toward a bad patient experience. Some other things that, as we've gone through this process too, that I have seen, one is, I guess, not so good story, but when it comes to accounts receivable, I had, a situation where it was a multiple owner facility, right? And one of the owners had passed away, unfortunately, a few weeks ago. And I was sitting down with a client last week, and the owner that had passed away, it was their responsibility to manage the accounts receivable, right? And keep an eye on that. Well, lo and behold, we were in a situation where the accounts receivable was way behind, and no one was really keeping an eye on it. No one cared to make phone calls and just place a higher priority on those collections. So that's kind of a worst case scenario. But this time of year doing that review, I think getting ahead of that is very important.
What I would say is, you know, I know the two of you have done a great job in working together on putting some checklists together, some identifying some important things for clients and prospects to be able to more or less give the, start that exam process. And if there's one recommendation that I would say for if you're listening to this communication right now, I'd say one of the first things you could do is, after you're done listening to this, download the checklist that we've kind of put together. And it's not a full checklist. It's just a few of the items that we believe that could be something that would be beneficial to you. And I think, Matt, you said it best as we were putting things together. If people can set a goal of maybe just one thing, attacking just one thing over the next 30 days, there's a pretty good chance that their practice will be better for it as they enter not only the new year, but even as they finish this current year.
Absolutely. Agree wholeheartedly. And the checklist is not necessarily meant to be all encompassing, but it provides a ton of information. So focusing more is definitely better in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you feel overwhelmed when you download the checklist and think, where am I going to start? What am I going to do? Just start somewhere. Just start with something. Pick one area, like Kurt said, and just start. Because if you don't start, you'll never get anywhere. But if you at least do one thing or pick one area to start with, you'll make some progress.
Yep. And I do believe we took that into consideration when we put this together. For all of you who look at the checklist and say, "Oh, I'm all good here," I'll tell you what, reach out to us, because we have a much more comprehensive one that you may want to dig in just a little bit deeper to make 2023 even more amazing than 2022. So Danielle, Matt, thank you again for your time today, and I appreciate it. And I think we've passed along some good information.